And I'm going to pass this rod off to Chris and start the base color if I can get Chris in here. Hey, Chrissy. So she'll maintain the temperature in this, and then we're going to apply that over the top of a clear layer. Putting the color on the tip like that is a method of getting that color onto the interior of the bowl. When I cut that mass off onto the tip of this clear and then squeeze it back over the outside, the thing that's going to come in contact with the tip of the clear first is the color that's applied to the tip of the white. When I squeeze the white back over the outside, it's going to squish over the top of that color and conceal it on the interior. I'm going to add more of the same color to the exterior of the white, but it'll look quite different. It'll obviously be on the outside and not on the interior. So a little air in the pipe, tap the end with my thumb, let the air expand and push into the glass. Release my thumb, I've released the trap pressure. If I didn't release my thumb, that would continue to expand for a little while. It would reach a point where the pressure equalized and then it would stop expanding. But the wall would then be too thin. So as I squeezed back here, I actually squeezed air out of the pipe. I'm going to make Chris wait a little bit because this needs to cool down before we cut that loose. She's ready, but this isn't. The relationship between the two, this needs to be pretty stiff and not fairly runny in order for me to do the overlay without distorting this part. I need to keep the wall consistent in thickness anywhere you would slice it going down the body. So you'd reach a point where out here at the tip, you're slicing through solid glass. But when you hit the tip of the bubble, you want it to be the same distance from the wall all the way around. Each time you do this, of course, it will be different. As we touch down there, I actually rotated the rod.
They're going to move so much.
That's going to make a difference in the color.
You're not going to have the perfect place for everything.
And then I torque it a little bit. So there will be in the color on the inside just a little bit of torque there at the center of the base. As I reheat, the colder part from the punty rod was the part that was toward the rod. So the white was hottest where it touched down on the clear first, coldest at the far end. When you reheat, you're kind of equalizing all of that. So now going on over the clear. This is called a rolled overlay. My clear was still a little on the hot side, so it actually is moving around a little bit. The good thing is I've done this part of it so many thousands of times, it's going to work out. It'll be fine. The way I described it in the last demonstration is you've done everything there is to do badly enough times that you now know how to fix almost all of the things that you can do wrong. A good thing, though, to know is when it's wrong enough that it's time to let it go. That's something you have to learn. Whenever you start a piece of glass, you start it with the understanding that it may not work out. It may not be the thing you were looking for it to be. It may not have the qualities that you were looking for, but it may also not work out on a grander scale, like it might fail in a very complete way, being broken glass on the floor of the shop. All sorts of things can go wrong. So one of the key lessons that you learn early on is that in glass, you never enumerate your poultry prior to its emergence from the ovoid sphere. And you also learn not to swear in front of audiences. Weekdays only. Oh, now this is the stuff that's going to be seen from the exterior of the bowl. And I am, though I've got some that comes all the way up, and you notice it gets thinner when it gets up toward the end of the white that's toward me. The reason I want that coverage to be thinner toward me is that's going to be the rim of the bowl. And the color when it's at the rim can cause problems. The pale transparents, not so much, but the red colored glass that's in that mixture is a very stiff color. Texturally, it's in a different glass base, and it doesn't want to move as easily. It's a much stiffer color than the other colors are. So it can cause problems with rich. Bring it all back to a symmetrical shape, getting rid of the coarse bumps, the coarse dents. In the process of doing that, you're putting in a lot of small pores, small ripples, small dents. And of course, you've squished around the interior and changed the shape and expanded just a little again. So all of the tools, when you're squeezing on the outside, one, when you come out of the glory hole, the skin is the part that's going to cool off the fastest. The surface is going to cool the quickest. When you touch it to a tool, you're going to be cooling the surface. When you press on the outside after you touch it with the tool, you are then squeezing something that's cooler and reducing it in scale over something that's softer and mushier underneath, and that causes little folds and ripples. This one, I wasn't quite to the point where it was even in shape before I had to stop pressing. This is an extra heat. You normally wouldn't have to take this one. But this is to gloss the surface over from having just touched it with the tool. So this will even up the surface, get it nice and smooth. And that's it until I take the gather from here over the top, the next gather. The next gather will be colorless glass, crystal. Crystal means crystal clear. That's all it means. When you see the word crystal on a piece of glass, it should be a colorless piece of glass, because that's what crystal means. If the glass has color in it, and it says crystal on it, that's wrong. That's a bid. They shouldn't be doing that. That's incorrect. If they're saying lead crystal, there's a chance that they are putting in a very small amount of lead and calling it lead crystal because they know many of you think that that's a better, higher quality glass and therefore should cost more. That's actually not necessarily true. If you're buying Waterford, Baccarat, Lalique, Steuben, you're paying for other aspects of the glass. It's made in lead glass, but you're paying for other things in the glass, not for the lead crystal. So this is a soda lime glass, not a lead glass. And going on there, what we were putting on was crystal, but the object is now not crystal anymore because it has color in it. And this is called cased or flash glass. When you have layers of color in the wall, that's the name for that. It's blown glass because we're inflating it and we've got our hands on it. It's hand blown glass. So beer bottles are blown glass, but they're machine blown. This is hand blown glass, and it's off-hand blown. That means it's not mold blown. Mold blown glass would be inflated inside of a wet wood or a metal mold. So at this point, as I go on with expanding this and shaping it, I'm gonna let you guys all direct the process. Actually, I said that incorrectly. I said I'm going to let you guys. I should have said I'm going to let all y'all direct the conversation here by asking questions. Anything you want to know, fire it out here, and I'll do my best to answer it. And I'll try and keep my answers brief, which is difficult for me. So start by saying Peter. That'll get my attention, and then ask your question. But when you ask your question, remember that you have to shout it out because it's really noisy in here. I'm not going to hear you unless you yell.
Peter,
Yes.
how long were you going past until you felt like it was something that you liked to do?
How long was I blowing glass until I felt like it was something that I would like, something that I would.
You were proud of.
Whoops. Sorry. Better watch what I'm doing here. Something that what? Okay. Yeah, something that I enjoyed or liked. That was immediate. I was sucked into the process within the first piece of glass that I made. I didn't know that I would keep on blowing glass for an extended period of time. At that point, it was art school, and Chris was sucked in, and we never talked about her beginnings so much, but we both started independent of one another. But I was seduced by the same things that bring you here. Watch. The magic of it is a process. It is a very strange material, and it doesn't stop being strange. That's also an incredibly slow thing to learn. And you are never truly in charge. There is no such thing as a master in glass. There are people who will be referred to as masters. They're great glass makers, but nobody is completely in control. The best glass makers in the world mess it up every single day that they work. They mess it up. And that's something that I like about it. Because if you are messing it up after years and years and years and years and years and years and years of making it, that means that you still have a challenge in front of you as you work. You still have the risk of total failure, and I like that.
This should have been a pretty good shot.
Yeah.
The
How
smoke
is it that the
coming
metal
off.
rod doesn't get too hot to touch?
How do you keep the metal rod from getting too hot?
Because you're rolling it in the
Or
middle.
why doesn't it get too hot? You are going to be moving your hand forward on the rod, not reaching out and grabbing, but moving forward in sort of bumps. Where my left thumb is when I'm on the pipe, it's hot enough that it hurts. Where the heel of my left hand is, the pinky side, it feels just like this pipe would just sitting out in the air. Where my left thumb is, it's really hot. And if I was to grab hold and hold it there, it would burn. 2 inches in front of that, it would burn immediately. 2 inches in front of that, it would sizzle enough that you would hear it out there in the audience. So the pipe is very hot, but as the heat travels back up the metal of the pipe, it dissipates into the air faster than it can travel up the metal. So the air is actually more conductive for heat than the metal is.
What does that piece of fiber do whenever you roll that fiber on there?
Can you do that one more time louder?
That piece of fiber that you got when you roll it, what does that do?
Okay, what is that tool that I'm using at the bench? We use two things in the demonstration that they didn't have during the Renaissance. Actually, three things. They didn't have sign language, so they didn't have an they didn't have this pad that I'm about to use, and they didn't have the torch. The pad's a very expensive tool. We go through one of them a day. It is called wet newspaper. Preferably the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. This one is the New York Times right here. And the reason you want to use the Journal or the Times is two parts. It has nothing to do with content. Well, it has to do with the physical content of the paper because the paper quality is higher. And the other thing is that the cut of the paper is slightly different. So when you fold it into a pad, those newspapers work really well. The Dallas Morning News goes to mush really fast, which is not very good newsprint. Nothing against the newspaper as a whole, but the newsprint itself isn't very good. Look over here. Hang on one second there. I'm having a little trouble with this
He's
stuff.
gonna catch his paper on fire.
Okay, so basically the question was, is there a shape or a color that I enjoy? I'm going to take that as we because really we're a team. The things that I like making the most are the things that are a challenge to the ability to get through the object and have it work out. It's always fun to make anything that seems to have its own voice is a way to describe it. It's like the Japanese or Chinese potters would talk about making thousands and thousands of pots and finding one among them that had something special. They're making the same pot over and over and over again. But every once in a while, there's one of them that just, there's something about it that has a special character. So that happens with all the work. That happens with any of it. But the pieces that are the most fun, I think, are when we're designing new objects and when we're learning to make them. Yes. Let's go add and full. Chris just asked a question. She didn't shout it out. She didn't say Peter first. So I don't know. I answered it anyway, but that's not really fair. So she asked, do we want to put a pad on this? And I said yes. And then she said, step down or full. So this is the pad part. We're adding extra thickness to the center of the base of the piece. That added about 3/16 of an inch of glass right in the center. The disc, the little pad that it made, is a little, it's like the size of a 50-cent piece around, about that size, maybe a little smaller.
Peter, how hot is that?
And it's in a domed recess in the bowl. Okay. Someone over here asked, how hot is that? And it's, the glory hole is running about 2,200 degrees. The furnaces are running between 21 and 2,200. The glass on the end of the tool, you've got a variation in there from probably 16 or 1,700 in the hottest areas down to around 1,200 on the surface of the coldest part. We are about to crack this loose on the rod that Chris has. I'm having a little bit of a hard time looking at it. Sometimes you get a barbershop pull effect from the colors, and that makes it very hard to look at shape when you've got color moving around. You're trying to look at just the surface, and you can't just see the surface. You see the color, whether intentionally or not. So you have to do a bunch of it by feel at that point. Chris has the punty. I'm actually going to take one more heat where I get this hot enough to move it slightly. And that's not normal at this point. I just want to feel what it's like down there because it doesn't look centered to me. But it feels good. Okay. Now we're going to attach that rod to the base of the piece and then crack loose from the punty onto the, from the pipe onto the punty.
Peter, is there any problem with the newspaper getting into the glass?
Is the newspaper getting into the glass?
Yes.
No. No. If you use the paper or one of the wet wooden tools on the glass at the wrong time, it will absolutely embed itself into the surface of the glass. That's when the glass is hot enough on the surface. Generally, right after you've taken a gather, you don't touch the glass with wet newspaper because the fresh hot glass will heat this up too quickly. It'll start to spark and char, even though it's soaking. Even though you throw water on it, and constantly are wetting down the surface of it. When you touch the glass with it, there's a vapor barrier that's formed by the water. The wood combusts, or the paper combusts fairly slowly, but if it gets to the point where it starts to spark and char, you're in the temperature range in the sparks and in the char, where they're actually heating the surface of the glass back up and able to adhere then to the surface. They'll make white spots, and if you gather over the top of them, they'll make a kind of a gray bubble area.
Peter,
Yeah.
when you were first starting out, what aspect did you find most challenging in your craft?
Okay, when you're first starting out, what aspect did you find most challenging? That, again, would be a tough question to answer in a straightforward way. When you first start out, if we were to start all of you on a class today, bring you all in and say, okay, we're going to take our first gather, we're going to walk through our first piece of glass. Here's the blowpipe, here's the furnace, here's the hot glass, here's how to see the glass in the furnace, here's how to take a gather, here's what to do with it, and we're going to go through it and make a piece. 50% of you, when you walk up to the furnace and we opened the door, half of you would say, no, thank you, and leave. I wasn't one of those 50%, so I'm okay with the door open and the heat and all of that. You go in and you dip a rod in there and you get the glass on the end of the rod, and when you come out of the furnace you can't control it because it's like honey. So it drools onto the surface of the furnace. You bang the rod into the door or into the wall of the furnace. 50% of you that stayed would do that, would drip the glass off the end or hit the side wall of the door. That's just normal. That's the way it is. And anyway, to keep it briefer, the people that stayed and actually got through their first piece of glass would have all made the same thing. Everybody would have made the same thing. It would have been a clear piece of glass that was a cross between a shot glass and an ashtray. So a little lumpy thing. And the next day, coming back, everyone who had a piece that came back to pick it up the next day would believe that their piece was the biggest one. Doesn't matter which one it actually is, they would believe it was the biggest one because the process is so intense. It'd take 45 minutes or so to make that little lumpy shot glass thing. And from there on, you're on some kind of learning curve that is dependent upon how much energy you put in. So